Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Chinezeslife. If you guys are new to my channel or this is your first time watching this type of content on my channel, first of all, welcome. And what I'll be doing in today's video is giving an in-depth recap slash review on the latest episodes of Insecure. So before we get into today's recap slash review, I just wanted to remind you guys that I do have resources down in my description box below related to how you can be a part of the Black Lives Matter movement, whether that's through petitioning or whether that's through raising awareness online or giving financially or even protesting. So definitely make sure to check that out using the links in my description box. And guys, before we get into the video part 2, as you can see, I have a new hairstyle. And I want you guys to know this wasn't planned at all. I actually had ordered the hair about a month or so ago, and I had tried to basically twist in on the sides, but it either kept on falling off or I couldn't grip it. But now that I basically let my hair grow for a month, and then I was just testing things out the other day. I wasn't even meant to do my whole head. And then I saw that the side was gripping, so I was like, hold on, wait, this could be a look. And that's how we got here. I literally didn't even film it or anything, but I'll probably do like a 1-week review, 2-week review, just kind of show you guys the method and process. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this review. Season 4, episode 9 of Insecure, Low-Key Trying. So this episode opens up with Lawrence and Issa in various scenarios, whether that's working together, both on their laptops, or whether that's eating, just playing around, and there is a lot of sex scenes too. And at first in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, like, you know, Issa's probably daydreaming because, you know, based on how things ended in the last episode, it didn't really seem like things were gonna really go anywhere. Like, it seemed like they were cool, but like, I didn't necessarily predict them spending too much time together. But I turn out to be wrong because this turns out to be a real life scene. I'm like, okay, like this is different. And I think both Issa and Lawrence are kind of aware of that too, because they kind of both have that moment, like amidst like everything, kind of being like, wow, like this is kind of weird, huh? Like, to both of them, they probably never really thought that, you know, they'd be back on such good terms like this. So it definitely is a weird feeling to be like, oh snap, like this is someone who I had so much history with, who was out of my life for an extended period of time, and now we're back. And it's kind of like, what is this? Like, what are we doing? Issa's basically like, you know, like she's not really sure what it is, but I think they're both just kind of in that place where they're just kind of like figuring things out. So it's not necessarily that they don't want to put a label on it, but it's just more so, you know, like they're just getting like used to each other again and then kind of seeing how things go kind of as they progress in a way. But I think what's super important, especially in this first scene, is that Lawrence basically asks Issa like, oh, what song's playing? And when she goes to check her phone to find out the name of the song for him, guess who writes her? It's Nathan. And Nathan basically in this instance is asking Issa if she can come over and help him with moving out. And Issa, you know, she's really been really good about like being open and honest and upfront, especially concerning Lawrence. So Issa basically brings it up to Lawrence. She's like, hey, did I ever tell you about my friend Nathan? And Lawrence is over here thinking like maybe that's the name of the band or something. But then Issa basically explains like, you know, like me and him, we used to date. He asked me if I can come help him move out his stuff this weekend. And, you know, I just kind of wanted to run that by you, like if you're uncomfortable with it or whatever the case may be. And Lawrence is basically just like, oh yeah, like that's cool. But I really like how Issa, you know, took that extra step and was like, you know, like this may be something that may make him uncomfortable. And I'd rather have it kind of be out in the open versus it looks like, oh, now I'm going back between you and him. Like, even though we're not officially in anything yet, like, I want you to know that I'm trying to change and I'm trying to be more open with you, and I'm trying to make sure that you're comfortable with this decision that I'm making. Because think about it, it's kind of like if Lawrence went to go help Condola move out, you know? It's kind of like Issa would want to know that, and then in turn, Issa kind of puts herself in Lawrence's shoes in a sense, and even just learns to like, I feel like as the season has progressed, she's kind of learning how to take more and more accountability for herself and for her actions and how what she does can make someone feel. So even though this is such like a minor thing in a way, I definitely think that it's a great start, and it just shows, you know, like little bits of Issa's growth. So definitely kudos to her on that. She's basically like, you know, like I want to be honest because I don't want to mess this up, but then she's like, wait, what is this, you know? Lawrence then responds and be like, well, like what do you want it to be? And Issa's kind of like, I don't know. And she just has a moment where she's like, well, like, do you have any loose ends? Basically being like, you know, like, what's the stitch with you and Condola? Like, she don't say her name, but you can kind of see that that's what she's hinting at. And then Lawrence reassures her like, yeah, you know, like we talked, that's done. And I'm just like, wait a minute. So y'all just gonna ignore that whole thing? Like, I wanted to know what she wanted to say to him. Lots of people were speculating that Condola may have been pregnant. And then once they started to say that, I'm like, wait, y'all have a point. Like, I even ran like a mini Twitter poll right before the episode, basically asking, I think I put, do y'all think Console is pregnant or not? And I believe that most people were kind of on my side, thinking that, you know, she was pregnant. But we didn't get any tea about that in this episode, so maybe we'll find out in the next what they spoke about. But I just find it odd that like it seemed like she was blowing up Lawrence's phone. Like, what was this big, huge, important thing that you had wanted to talk to him about? Or was it really just kind of like ending things and just being clear and getting that clarity? And right as soon as they finished talking about that, we basically also learned that Lawrence has one more round of interviews left for this potential job in San Francisco. So I'm assuming that he'll be traveling back up there for that. So now we fast forward to Molly finally meeting with Dr. Rhonda. Again, this is such a huge step because she literally has not been in what seems like forever. And it's great for her to be able to finally have this opportunity to speak with a professional, someone who can kind of like, you know, I feel like get through to her in a way, because a lot of the times it seems as if when other people try to give Molly advice, she just kind of takes it in a harsh way, or she just doesn't realize what people are saying and it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. So again, I'm really glad that she was able to go and sit down and talk with Dr. Rhonda. And of course, y'all know Molly's outfits are always on point, but this episode especially, she was just styling. Like, she had this nice cream cardigan on, some nice print pants, these nice cute booties. I was like, oh sis, yes. Like, imagine just wearing that just to go to the therapist. Like, that's literally goals. Molly starts to tell Dr. Rhonda how she's been feeling tense lately and how she really thinks it all stems back to her and Issa's rocky relationship these past few months. It's kind of like that has been the building block that had started all of this. So in a way, she kind of blames Issa for like all these other reasons as to why she's feeling so tense, which again, it's kind of like, all right, but let's unpack this. Like, why do you think that? Molly's telling Dr. Rhonda that, you know, Issa crossed the line by going behind her back. And while that definitely may be true, Dr. Rhonda's like, okay, but like, is there anything like looking back that you feel as though that you could have done differently, you know, in handling of the situation? And Molly really seems like in that moment, she really seems like she's about to like consider it and consider what she may have done to lead to that point. And Molly really seems like in this moment that she's like genuinely like about to be like, you know what, maybe I could have, like, what do you think I could have done? Or maybe I could have acted like this. But I would say to no surprise, but I was honestly a little bit surprised. She basically says no, like Issa needs to apologize. And in that moment, you can kind of still see that Molly's not taking accountability for her actions. She's basically just placing all of the blame on Issa, which again is unfair because they both contributed to that downfall. Molly was always throwing shady comments, was always doing this, doing that. So it's like, you can't say that you didn't do anything to also lead Issa to this breaking point, you know? So then Dr. Rhonda basically breaks it down like this. She's like, Molly, like, it's like when someone upsets you or is angry with you, it's kind of like you put up a wall and then you just shut down. So it's like, do you want to work towards fixing it? Or like, you know, like, are you just going to keep on being angry forever? Because just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you necessarily have to continue to have a relationship with them either, but it's just more so forgiving them for yourself so that you can move on from that situation. And one of the things that I love that Dr. Rhonda said was, do you want to be right? Or do you want to be in a relationship? It's kind of like, if you're so focused on being right and so focused on, oh, well, they have to apologize because they were wrong, it's kind of like you also have to open up yourself for that person to be able to be in that position to apologize. Because in this case, it's like, okay, like, yes, you're saying that Issa was wrong, Issa needs to apologize. But if Issa were to call you right now, would you even want to talk about what the situation at hand is? And Molly definitely like is like, whoa, like, Dr. Rhonda, you just gonna read me like that? And again, at that point, I was thinking, I'm like, all right, like, this is it. Like, she's definitely gonna like see where she's coming from and be able to change. And again, another great question is Dr. Rhonda asking, like, you know, does this relationship still serve you? And Molly gives an answer that's kind of confusing because I feel like that's a yes or no question. But then she says, well, that's Issa. She's my best friend. Just because she is your best friend, or necessarily in this case was your best friend in the past, doesn't mean that that relationship serves you. That's like growing up, you had childhood best friends that you're no longer as close to. It may not be any bad blood, but sometimes you just grow apart from people and sometimes stay apart for the better. So in this case, it's kind of like she didn't give a straightforward answer. It's kind of like, if Issa is your best friend, okay, but you guys have had an issue and the relationship is no longer the same. So you can keep on saying that she's your best friend, but you just putting the best friend label on her isn't going to fix your situation, like, period. You have to put in the work if you want the relationship to work, which is then the next question from Dr. Rhonda. She's like, are you willing to put in an effort to repair this relationship? And we're just left with Molly just pondering, thinking about that question. And to me, I feel as though being asked these tough questions really makes you consider, like, wow, like, yes, like, this relationship does need repairing, but am I willing to actually make it work, you know? Because you can want for something to work, but if you're not willing to put in the work to make it work, it's not gonna work. It's as simple as that. And Molly, again, is kind of thinking, well, oh yeah, she's my best friend, so, you know, it'll work out. That doesn't mean anything. Her being your best friend doesn't mean anything, clearly, if you guys have not even been on speaking terms, and that's still your quote-unquote best friend. Just because that's your best friend doesn't mean that you're obligated to continue in that relationship. And sometimes that's going to lead to ultimately the downfall of the relationship if you're just not willing to put in any effort towards fixing it. So at this point, I was really hopeful, thinking that, you know, like, okay, like Molly, like, you know, she's able to get this different perspective from Dr. Rhonda. You know, hopefully she's able to reach out to Issa. Maybe they'll talk. It could go well, it could not go well, but at least they tried, you know? So for our next scene, we see that Issa is now at home, catching up on work. And while she's doing so, a text appears from who else but Nathan, basically confirming with Issa the time that she should pull up to help him move out on Saturday. Basically, at this point, she's going through her contacts, seeing who she can call, to what to me seems like in that moment, like, like, I'm about to go chill with Nathan, but I'm seeing Lawrence again, so I'm not really sure how this is gonna go about. Do I have to tell Nathan about Lawrence? I already told Lawrence about Nathan. All of these thoughts are probably running through her head. So she reaches out to Kelly. However, Kelly's phone goes to the voicemail, and Kelly speaks Spanish. Like, I feel like we just learn little things about Kelly each and every episode, but that was just dope to know because she had her greeting both in English and in Spanish. But anyways, Kelly doesn't pick up. Issa basically leaves a message being like, hey girl, like, you know, I know that you're busy, but I was just calling for advice, you know, call me back when you can. Issa then calls her brother Amal, and we see that Amal seems like he's eating like the spiciest jerk chicken of his life, because he could barely even respond back to Issa on the phone, and she's basically left like with no options as to, you know, what to do or who to call. And in her head, she's probably thinking like, dang, like the person who would know the situation best, the person who knows me best is my best friend, but you know, we're not even on speaking terms right now. What would even happen if I were to call her? Like, do I even want to unload all this on her right now? So we basically see that Issa calls Molly, she picks up and they're just talking. Issa's basically like, hey girl, like, hope you're doing good. I wanted to see if you wanted to meet up. I kind of have a lot going on in my life right now. She brings up Nathan, she brings up Lawrence. And then Molly is like, oh, typical Issa, still being the same selfish chick that I knew, this, that. And I'm just like, whoa, like, is this for real? But then we see that that was basically one of Issa's like little like visions in her head, because in the real situation, Issa calls Molly, but she doesn't pick up. So she leaves a voice message basically being like, hey girl, hope that you're doing well. I was wondering if you wanted to, you know, like meet up and we can go out sometime. Anyways, like, let me know. And I'm not sure if Molly calls Issa back or if she texts her, but basically we see that they do end up meeting up to go to brunch. And Issa is now at the brunch spot, and you can see that, you know, she's kind of hesitant, waiting for Molly to walk in, not necessarily really knowing what to say as well, since they haven't seen each other in so long. Basically, even the waiter can tell that Issa's nervous, because she comes over to ask like, oh, you know, like, are you still waiting on the person? Issa's like, yeah, they're still coming. And she's basically just, you know, spilling tea, being like, yeah, it's my best friend. Well, kind of, you know, we're just going through da-da-da right now. And the waitress is just like, listen, like, can I get you something to drink? Like, you seem like you need it, girl. And Issa basically ends up ordering mimosas the same way that Molly likes it, which apparently is with like 1 drop of orange juice. And I definitely side with that, because that's literally me personified. Like, that's the best way to have your mimosa. Just a drop of orange juice is all that you need, guys. So Molly finally arrives at the brunch spot, and Issa, like, you know, Issa's awkward, guys. Issa's basically like, hey! But like, she's mad hype, and you can clearly see that like Molly's kind of taken aback, because she's like, oh, hey girl. And they end up giving each other that like awkwardish hug where they're like, but it's not like a nice hug, like, I haven't seen you in mad long, how you been hug. It's more so like, all right, like, we're gonna hug, but this is awkward because we like, are we even gonna be cool after this conversation? Like, both parties don't really know what to expect in a sense, but they go ahead and get seated. Issa basically tells Molly, you know, like, I went ahead and ordered you your mimosa, how you always like it. That is, if you still do like it like that. Because again, just little things like remembering that Issa had changed her favorite drink, like that whole conversation with Lawrence in that last episode. So she's just confirming, being like, you know, like, I know that we haven't spoken in a while, so you know, like, just making sure that you still like that. And guys, we have to give Issa props, because literally during this whole brunch conversation, it's as if Issa was carrying the conversation, because most of the topics were things that Issa brought up. And when Issa finally did ask Molly a question back, being like, oh, you know, like, how's work? Or like, I saw your vacation pictures. Like, Molly was just being very short and dry with the details. But then we see, you know, Issa was able to be more animated when she told Molly the story of those DC girls and different things like that. But the thing is about this brunch is that we didn't get to see them actually hash out the actual issue. So it's kind of like these conversations were more surface level. They weren't too personal. And this point in time, it's kind of like, all right, well, Issa was already the one who scheduled this lunch. You arrived, like, you guys are talking. Issa's bringing up every single topic. So it's like, Molly, if it's really bothering you that much that things are not resolved, you know, maybe you should bring it up. But neither of them end up bringing it up. And especially for Issa's part, it's kind of like, all right, like, if you're not going to bring it up, then I'm not going to bring it up. And the fact that you accepted and that you didn't want to bring it up, it kind of makes it seem that, you know, like, maybe like, we'll talk about it eventually, but we could be cool for right now. And I definitely can see how that's a thing, because maybe to Issa, like, maybe Issa had moved past that and she didn't necessarily need a verbal apology in a sense. And we even get to see that Molly was going to offer to pay for the brunch, but then Issa ends up covering the bill. So it's just like little gestures like that kind of make it seem to Issa that, like, okay, like, we're cool. So then Issa goes ahead and basically lets Molly know that, you know, like, she'll be helping Nathan move out. I'm not sure if she was necessarily inviting Molly to come help Nathan move out with her as well, but it just kind of seemed like, oh, like, since, you know, you'll be around Andrew, probably, like, we'll probably end up running to each other again, so, you know, I'll see you soon. And then they say goodbye to each other basically. So we move forward to Molly basically coming back to Andrew's place after brunch, and as Molly's walking into Andrew's place, we see that Andrew's actually on the phone and he's speaking Chinese, which makes me believe that, you know, like, like, maybe he's speaking to his brother or another family member. But it's odd because as soon as Molly kind of enters, he first of all starts speaking English and then also rushes off the phone real quick. So I'm like, like, that was probably Victor, because it's like, all right, like, now Molly's here, like, he doesn't want her to be like, oh, who was that? So he starts speaking English. At least that's what I got from it. I don't know if I'm reading too deeply into it. You guys know that Andrew is like king of asking like questions that, even though if they're like a simple question, it just like, they're just such deep questions in a way, like the way that he looks in your eyes when he says them. So he goes ahead and he asks, he's like, oh, so how was brunch? And Molly's like, oh, it was good. Like, we laughed, we talked, we joked, like nothing happened. And then Andrew's kind of like, oh, so you guys talked it out then. Then Molly basically is like, yeah, like, we didn't talk about the block party or anything related to that, or like any of the other things as to why we have issues. And you can kind of see that Andrew's confused, because his face is just like, oh, like, are you guys good then, kind of? And then Molly basically tells Andrew that, you know, she just felt as though it was very superficial. And in my head, I'm thinking like, girl, if you wanted it to be more than surface level conversations, you could have given more, or you could have brought up the issue if you really wanted to talk about it that badly, you know? And that's exactly what Andrew ends up asking Molly, because he's like, oh, like, did you at least try to bring it up? And Molly's just kind of like, no. And Molly basically gets into this whole thing being like, you know, like, well, I showed up. And then Andrew's like, you know, don't get me wrong, like, I'm on your side and everything, but maybe you can meet her halfway. And he's definitely right at that. It's like, okay, you showed up, but this was really deeply, heavily on your heart. So it's like, if you had felt that way, you definitely should have brought it up. If you saw that the conversation was about to end and you guys were about to part ways and you guys didn't talk about the actual issue, you should have been like, hey, you know, I really think that we should talk about XYZ the next time that we meet up. Like, you could have also taken initiative. And that's basically what Andrew's trying to get at. It's kind of like, you can't let Issa be the only one trying to fix it, or the only one trying to put in the effort. So it's like, meet her halfway and at least try to bring things up maybe the next time that you guys talk. And we see that my earlier predictions were kind of spot on, just saying. Andrew lets Molly know that his brother Victor is in town for the weekend and he's actually invited them out to go to a Clippers game. Andrew's like, come on, like, you know, like it's a peace offering, and Molly just kind of brushes it off. She's like, you know what, you guys should go, like make it a guy's night, like I'm good, or whatever the case may be. And based off of that simple interaction, it's kind of seeming like, okay, like maybe things are better in a way, and maybe she genuinely wants them to have a guy's night. But then I'm also thinking, like, you know, like he's in town and he's not necessarily in town all the time, and he clearly invited you, so, you know, at least consider going. I feel like that's what she really should have said, that, you know, like I'm still uncomfortable with this, versus being like, yeah, you guys should go, like make it a guy's night. You kind of have to let Andrew be updated on what this is as well, because at the end of the day, that is his brother. And while it's not rushing for Molly to forgive him necessarily, it's more so just being like to Andrew, like, hey, you know, I'm just not comfortable with him yet. However, I will try for next time, versus just being like, no, you guys should just have a... So we move forward to a scene with Issa and her assistant basically checking out some places, and we can see that little moves are being made as far as the next official event that they'll be hosting. So in this case, her assistant is definitely able to boost her mood and kind of just remind her that, you know, you are doing big things. We've been able to accomplish a lot so far, and we are going to finish this, and this is going to be a successful event, which definitely is a nice thing for Issa, or a nice person rather for Issa to be able to have there and to be backing her up. And that definitely like lifted her spirits, because as they're parting ways, you just kind of see that Issa is in a better mood. And to make things better, we see that she's getting an incoming call from Lawrence. Lawrence basically calls her and lets her know that the interview went really well, and he kind of acts like, oh, like what's been going on with you? And she lets him know that, you know, like I actually reconnected with Molly, like we went out for brunch. And he's like, oh wow, like that's great, like how was it? She's telling him it was good, how she's like, yeah, you know, like we just laughed and joked about things. And she knows that, you know, like they didn't actually talk about anything too serious, but based on maybe arguments that they've had in the past, or just how she knows Molly as a person over all these years, she kind of reassures him and reassures herself in a sense. She's basically like, yeah, we didn't talk about those things, but I know how she is. Like she's probably still cooling off. You know, in a couple of weeks, I'll invite her to Self-Care Sunday, and then by then, like, we'll have squashed it, or whatever the case may be. So again, this kind of shows that, like, that pattern in a sense, like the fact that they've known each other for so long, and the fact that Issa's like, yeah, we may have not spoken about it right now, but we probably eventually will, and this is probably just, like, easing back into things, whereas Molly was over here still going to the Issa's brunch and still accepting the invitation, but has a completely different outlook on the situation than Issa does. So it kind of just shows that in communication, even though they were even able to meet up and see face to face, they're clearly not seeing eye to eye still. And Lawrence tells Issa, you know, like maybe you guys just needed some space before trying again, which kind of makes them both have this like sly smile on their face, because I'm thinking like, y'all needed some time before you tried again, didn't you? Okay. So the day finally comes for Issa to help Nathan move into his new apartment. So she's kind of, you know, doing the Issa thing and practicing how she's gonna greet him. Just given the fact that, again, you know, she is talking to Lawrence again, but then it's like, now she kind of has to like bro zone or friend zone Nathan in a way. Even as she gets inside, we see that she's kind of being awkward. Like anytime she's around him, like too close physically, like she'll move to the opposite side. So they get to talking, and Nathan actually lets Issa know that now he's one of the co-owners of his barber shop. Basically the old owner retired, so him and like the other barbers all put money together, and now they're all co-owning the shop together. And he actually lets Issa know that, you know, like her hustling, her, you know, being driven kind of motivated him to kind of do that same thing as well, which is definitely nice to know, because it's like having people around you that motivate you to also want to push yourself to new limits is such an important thing in life in general. So Nathan also lets Issa know, because obviously he knows what her job is and that sometimes she may need spaces for different events and stuff like that, but he lets her know that, you know, they have a space in the back of the shop would she ever need it. And then we see that his little flirty side comes out, because he's like, I'll earn it. And also, guys, can we please take a moment for Nathan's voice, because it literally is so attractive. It's like so deep and like luxurious, and like he don't even gotta try. He could be saying waffles and it just sounds mad attractive. So anyways, basically Nathan is kind of insinuating like, you know, I'll earn it. Like, I can't wink, by the way. But Issa kind of clearly sees that, like, all right, like this is probably the best time to let him know that, you know, I am back in talks with Lawrence. So let me just go ahead and say it. So she lets Nathan know that, you know, I just wanted to let you know that I am speaking with my ex again. And he's just kind of like, wait, like the one you cheated on? And she's like, yeah, that one. Like, we're, you know, we're just talking things out and it seems that we're going on good. She's basically like, yeah, like, you know, it's still new, but, you know, we're figuring it out. So Nathan starts to laugh and Issa's just kind of like, what's that about? Like, why are you laughing? And Nathan's basically like, you know, like, I just thought that you were over that. You know, he just seems very sometimey. Issa then tells Nathan, like, you know, like, we talked it out, we're in a good place. And Nathan, you know, he responds like, okay, well, I just hope that he keeps his shit together this time. And I'm just like, whoa, like this conversation just went from 0 to 100. Cause I don't know, it kind of seems like, it's not like Nathan's like salty, but it's just more so in a way he's just confused. Cause it's kind of like, to him, he legitimately thought that he would probably never hear about this ex again. But then to hear that like the girl who you formerly dated, who you're like still cool with, is kind of going back to this old situation, it kind of does make you wonder, like, well, what changed? Like, I thought that, you know, like that was something that you'd never do again. So you can kind of hear that in his tone of voice as it changed, and even just him laughing about it. But whatever the case may be, this kind of triggers Issa in a sense to kind of say some things that I'm sure she wishes later on that she had not have said or not had delivered in such a way. Because in this moment, Issa's basically like, you know, at least he knows how to use his words and not disappear. And I loved how in this scene, the focus was first on Issa. Like, we're still in the same shot. So as Issa was saying that, the focus was on her, but then she was there in a distance. But as soon as she was done saying it, the focus was now on Nathan. So that was definitely just a lovely cinematography right there. But basically it's just silent for a second, because he's basically like, I didn't just disappear, like I found out that I'm bipolar. Basically letting Issa know that while he was gone during that time, like he was just figuring things out for himself mentally, and he was kind of processing like what this identity and what this diagnosis means to him in a sense, because that can be a huge thing too, because he even said it himself, like he didn't want people to think that he was crazy or that he was weird or that they couldn't talk to him in a sense because of this new diagnosis. Like he just needed to figure things out on his own, like for himself, like figure out what this means to him and how he's going to let it define him or not define him in a sense. Issa's just in this moment like, wow, like I'm so sorry, like I had no idea, like I wish I could have like helped you through this. And he's just kind of like, nah, like, you know, there's no way that, you know, you would be able to tell or whatever the case may be. And it was a really nice moment because he's like, you know, I got clarity about a lot of things in my life and the type of people that I want in it. And he lets Issa know, like, you know, like you're one of the people that I really want in my life and that I appreciate you. And Issa's basically like, you know, I appreciate you too. And they're able to kind of go back to regular conversation. But I do like how that was all able to just come out, even though the delivery and just how they got there may have not been the best. We see that they clearly are able to just kind of talk to each other and to be real and open and honest with each other. And again, this is another great moment with Issa too. Just being able to be there for Nathan as a friend, especially being that he was able to open up to her about something this serious to him as well. And we even see that they're able to go right back to joking because Nathan's kind of like, listen, just because I got all sincere with you doesn't mean that we're done unpacking. Like, come on, like, let's do this. So for our next scene, we see that Molly is now back at Andrew's place and it looks as if she brought home takeout. And apparently she was supposed to bring home some of Andrew's favorite food, which is Indian food, but it turns out she ended up just bringing Chinese takeout, and he's just kind of like disappointed in a sense. Like you could see it in his face. He's just like, oh, okay. So Molly goes ahead and asks Andrew like, oh, like how was the game? And Andrew's basically like, oh, it was really good. Like we ended up having great seats. Apparently I was sitting next to one of the Migos. I don't even know which one it was. Just little comments like that. But then he's just kind of ending it being like, you know, like it was kind of awkward without you being there. And Molly's just kind of like, oh, why is that? And Andrew lets her know, like, you know, like he invited both of us. I basically had to lie and say that you were busy with work. Molly's then like, you know, like I didn't ask you to lie. Andrew kind of pauses and is like, well, you know, like he's still my brother. Like, are you just never going to see him? And Molly's response is kind of like, I don't know why you would ask me to do something that makes me uncomfortable. And then Andrew's kind of like, you know, well, you can like at least try. And I definitely agree with Andrew, just more so the fact that she could have brought all of this up yesterday, the day before. So it's like, even if she wouldn't have went to the game, maybe they could have like scheduled a call, or maybe they could have met up in person for something like a lunch. just to kind of like, you know, like I know that we're not on the best terms, but you know, I just wanted to try to turn a new leaf, or at least just, again, even if she didn't want to meet up with Victor at all, she could have just let Andrew know the day prior to that, you know, this is how I'm actually feeling about it, versus just not saying anything and kind of like really letting Andrew believe like, oh, maybe she just wants us to have a guys' night, when it really turns out that she's still salty over that past situation. And I feel as though if you're not being open and honest with Andrew about this, or at least being like, all right, like, you know, like I'm not comfortable with going out with him this time, but I am going to try to move forward in the future, because I know that he's your brother, and I know that your relationship with him is important, and I know that your relationship with me is important, and I want to make this work. So I'm going to, you know, put my pride aside and try to make amends in a sense. And I feel as though this may potentially be the downfall of Andrew and Molly's relationship, just the fact that, one, she's not taking accountability for her actions in that whole situation with Issa, and it's kind of making him like look at her and like question certain actions that she does. But then now with this situation and her brother, like this like weird tension and just not knowing if she's ever going to actually try to forgive him in a sense, is just kind of like unsettling, because it's like, all right, like this is still my brother at the end of the day, like he's not going anywhere, but at the end of the day you can go somewhere, you know? So it's like, are you going to try to make it work, or are you just gonna leave it stagnant? And literally right in the midst of this conversation, Nathan and Issa walk in, because of course Nathan is moving out of him and Andrew's place and into his own place, which obviously means he has to come back and forth and be getting the stuff. And we clearly see that neither party was expecting each other. And Nathan's basically like, oh, my fault, like, you know, just picking up stuff. Didn't know I'd be interrupting you guys, my bad, like, we'll be out real quick. But then Molly has the takeout, and then Andrew kind of like gives that eye signal over to her. And Molly's like, oh, like, we're about to eat takeout, like, you guys can stay. And then we see that Issa answers now, and she's basically just like, oh no, like we just ate, like we're good. But then Nathan's looking over at Issa like, girl, we did not eat, what you mean? And then Issa basically is like, yeah, you know, I'm lying, nope, we didn't eat, sure, we'd love to stay. And Nathan's basically like, yeah, because I don't know what she was talking about, like I'm hungry. So Issa and Nathan end up staying, and they're all enjoying takeout, just laughing, having a good time, drinking wine. It looks like everything is kind of going great, like the two parties are meshing, everything's going well. And Andrew even said like, you know, it's kind of like a farewell celebration for Nathan. We even see that although Molly and Issa clearly are still not on the best terms, they're still joking around with each other, and even bring up an insider of Issa's first apartment, basically being like, oh, you remember that first smelly apartment? They're just reminiscing on all the things that they used to do there, and even bring up some of the past drinking games that they used to. And basically Issa's like, oh yeah, like this game that we used to play called Celebrity Height. Basically you name a celebrity and then everyone has to guess their height. Whoever's wrong has to drink. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm definitely still in that. Like that's a great game because it really gets you thinking and it's nice and quick. And then obviously the heights are Googleable, so it's real easy. But anyways, Issa's kind of like, oh, we should play. And Nathan's like, oh yeah, I'm down. But then Molly's just like makes some standoffish face, and it's just kind of like, oh shoot, like my fault. Because Issa's like, oh no, well we don't have to, like if you guys are tired. But then Molly kind of goes like, oh no, like it's fine, we can play. But I'm just like, why did you make that whole big thing like such a big deal when it really, like, I don't know, that was just a weird vibe interaction right there. But they end up playing and you can tell that everyone's really into the game. And then there comes a point in time where I guess Andrew was supposed to drink, but he ran out of wine. So he runs to the kitchen to go get another bottle. So kind of as soon as Andrew gets up to go get wine from the kitchen, basically Molly sends him a text. However, that awkward moment when her text to Andrew actually gets sent to Issa. And y'all, the text said, see, I'm trying with her. I said, no.
No, she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready.
And then Issa makes a power move and she responds to the text as she's sitting right in front of Molly. And she says, I don't think that this was meant for me. She packs her things and exits. I said, wow. Wow. Because that's so awkward, because it's kind of like you're talking about me as I'm in the same room as you, as like, you know, like I'm trying with her. Like, what is that even supposed to mean? Like, I'm over here thinking that we're having a good time, and then you're over here texting your boyfriend as I'm still literally right in front of you, right across from you, thinking that, you know, like obviously I know that we still haven't spoken about anything really as far as like the more serious stuff. But it's kind of like, what do you mean you're trying? Like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, can you not stand me? Like, I don't understand. So I definitely don't disagree with Issa just deciding to pack up her things and leave in that moment. Because Andrew basically comes back with a bottle like, oh, we're back in business. And then Issa's like, actually, I think I'm gonna go. And then Molly chases right after her and be like, Issa, wait. And I'm just like, dang, the guys are probably just like, yo, what is going on now? Like, what? And literally, like, as soon as Issa gets outside, she probably just ordered a lift real quick because it ended up coming pretty quickly. So Molly ends up coming outside and she's like, Issa, I'm sorry you saw that. It wasn't meant for you. And Issa's like, yeah, like, no shit. But then Molly's like, you know, like, that's just how I've been feeling. This whole thing just feels so forced. And I was just like, wow, this whole thing feels so forced. Because then Issa's like, you know, like, I've been trying to get us back to where we were before, but it's kind of like, it feels like I'm the only one putting in effort. So it's like, do you really want this to work? I'm confused. She's literally like, I didn't realize it was this hard for you to be around me. And it's true. It's like, you accepted the brunch invitation and then you're the one who invited us to stay for longer. So it's like, you didn't have to say yes to either of those instances, but now that you've been around me, it kind of seems like you don't want to be around me. So I'm just left confused. Like, do you want this to work or do you not want this to work? Because then Molly has the audacity to be like, oh, by inviting me to brunch, like by playing old drinking games. But then I'm like, Molly, like, what more do you want? Like, I don't understand. Like, if you really wanted to talk about the situation, you could have initiated the second hangout. Like, why does it always have to be Issa to bring up the solution to the problem? And especially that just shows even furthermore that she seriously has not considered how she could have been wrong in any of these instances. And it's kind of like, everything that her therapist had told her, it's kind of like, again, went through one ear and out the other. Because then Molly's like, we didn't even talk about what's been going on with us. And Issa's like, okay, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about the block party then. And then Molly's basically like, you know, like, it's bigger than the block party. We've been off for months. And Issa's like, yeah, I know, like, I'm aware. That's why I reached out. But, you know, I can't be the only one willing to actually put in work to fix this relationship. And it's so true. And I'm so glad that she told Molly that too, because that's literally the same thing that now the therapist has told her this. Andrew has told her this. And now the person who you're directly in this conflict with, who's creating all this tension apparently in your life, is directly telling you that, you know, like, if you want this relationship to work, like, you have to put in some work too. Like, I can't carry the whole relationship. I can't repair the whole relationship on my own. It's literally 50-50. So are you willing to put in the work or no? And then Molly goes ahead and says, you know, like, maybe who I am now and who you are now, like, you know, maybe we just don't fit anymore. And Issa just says, okay. Because what else is she supposed to say to that? You just have to say okay to that. You're basically telling me in that instance that, like, what we have can no longer work. Like, the friendship that we once had can no longer work because we're in different spaces right now. So Issa just says, okay. And to me, that seems like the end of the conversation and the end of the friendship. But then Molly's basically just like, okay, like, seeming mad offended that Issa just said okay. But it's like, what do you want her to do? Is she supposed to beg for your hand in friendship? Like, that's OD. Like, you're saying okay, like, questioning her okay, but it's like, what exactly do you want for Issa to do? Like, she's already reached out. She's already tried. You're the one who just literally wrote a text message right to her that was supposed to go to your boyfriend. So it's like, she's putting in this effort. She's trying. She's, you know, making herself more available. And she's the one who, again, initiated the first hangout. It's kind of like, Molly, like, what effort did you put in that you were trying to fix this relationship, you know? It's not fair to Issa for you to question her saying okay when you literally just told her 2 seconds ago that the relationship is completely done. It's completely over. Issa's just like, you know, I mean, there really isn't much more to say. And then literally in perfect timing, her lift pulls up and she's on her way. And then that's basically the end of the episode right there. So if I had to give this episode a rating, guys, we are nearing the end of the season. And again, it seems as though the episodes are getting better and better. So this is another 10 out of 10 episode rating from me. I really like how we were able to kind of explore more so Issa's vulnerability and her openness, whether that was letting Lawrence know about Nathan or letting Nathan know about Lawrence or letting Molly know about herself, because someone had to tell Molly about herself, even though this is now the third person to tell her about herself. I also love how things seem to be working in everyone's careers as far as advancements. We see that Lawrence seems like he's going to be getting this job in San Francisco, and I'm wondering what that's going to mean for the dynamic of his relationship with Issa. Like, are they going to make things official again, is she only going to be seeing him when he comes to LA? Like, will they talk when he's in San Fran? So that's definitely something to explore. I also love how Issa was able to be open and honest with Nathan, being like, hey, I am talking to Lawrence again, which also led to him being open and honest with her about why exactly he did ghost and what's been going on in his life. And again, that's definitely a huge thing, to be able to be comfortable enough to tell someone that. And the fact that he even told her that, you know, like, I'm really happy to have you in my life. Like, sometimes hearing those things is like definitely like important. And also Andrew, of course, Andrew and Molly, that whole situation as concerning Victor. I'm just kind of wondering, like, this definitely feels as though it's going to create a strain in their relationship. Because again, we saw that Andrew rushed off the phone as soon as he was talking to his brother and Molly walked in. And even we see that Molly's kind of avoiding talking about the actual direct problem with Victor. And it's just kind of like, oh, you guys should have a guys' night. So it kind of seems like this is actually something that's bothering Andrew. Because again, as he said, like, this is his brother. Like, this is someone who's in his life. So I'm definitely curious to see if Molly and Andrew are going to last. Because based off these past interactions, and even him seeing the whole situation with Issa unfold, and even him kind of questioning, like, you know, like, maybe you should put in some effort too. It kind of seems like there could be some tension in that relationship too, as a result of her not working on these other problems in her life. And again, I do like, though, however, how Molly was able to go and speak with her therapist and kind of get a different opinion versus people that she knows in her personal life. But maybe it's kind of the fact that Dr. Rhonda was saying similar things to what Andrew said that kind of makes Molly feel as though, like, you know, like, I'm still in the right though, like, Issa was wrong. And that question was so important, like, do you want to be right or do you want to be in a relationship? And that's something for us to all consider too, because it's like, sometimes you're gonna have to take the L and just, you know, humble yourself and apologize, or even just try to make things work. And it's like, you have to realize and recognize, like, is this actually worth working on? Or am I just gonna let it go? And it's kind of like Molly wants the relationship to work, but she doesn't want to put in any work. So it's kind of like, that's not fair to Issa to be having to be the one to carry the entire relationship, especially when, at least in my opinion, like, yes, they were both wrong, but like, Molly, like, did you see what you did to her? Like, you literally ruined her biggest event of her career. So it's like, yeah, you can say she's wrong all you want, but you were wrong too, and you need to recognize that. And especially as a grown adult, like, you cannot be acting mad childish when it comes to rebuilding relationships. Like, it's not gonna be a walk in the park. She's just thinking that, okay, like, yes, we're best friends, so it's gonna work out. Like, no, it's gonna take work for something to work out. So I really hope that Molly does get it together, especially by the season finale. But at this point, I don't think that Issa and Molly should be reaching out to each other, especially not Issa reaching out to Molly, because clearly, like, you were in the wrong. Like, especially if anything now, in this case, like, if Molly doesn't reach out to Issa, that's OD. And that clearly just shows that she doesn't value her friendship at all. So guys, I'm definitely looking forward to next week. I cannot believe that next week will be the season finale. And as you can see, like, there's just so many predictions and so many theories as to what's gonna happen. But all I'm hoping for, I don't even know what's gonna happen, honestly. I want to see what's going on with Kelly and Tiffany for sure. I definitely want to see if Condola is pregnant or not. I want to see if Lawrence gets this job. I really hope that he does. He seems like, you know, he's in a really good place, especially concerning that. And I do not want to see Molly in next week's episode unless Andrew is breaking up with her, just saying. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in with me today. Make sure that you're subscribed to my channel, so go ahead and pause this video and turn on the bell notifications as well, so that you do know when I am posting a new video. And if you guys do not follow me on Instagram, make sure to follow me over there at chinezeslife. And if you're not following me on Twitter, make sure to follow me over on Twitter at chinezeslife, so that you're able to, you know, catch my live tweets and just tweets in general. I'm literally always on there. But this past episode, I was really in there. I was getting all my thoughts out because, y'all, like, what? Watching the show and being on the timeline is definitely just so fun. So definitely, especially for the season finale, I'll be doing the same thing. So make sure to follow me over there. And also just a reminder to check out the links in my description related to the Black Lives Matter movement and how you can be supportive of it. And that is all that I have for today. So I will see you guys in my next one. Bye, everyone.